This is nScreenNoise. My name is Colin Dixon, founder and chief analyst at nScreen Media, and it is September 2020. Making a hasty switch from theatre to digital delivery is not simply a case of revamping marketing and finding an appropriate delivery platform in the digital space. For smaller film producers, it can mean radical changes are required. In this interview with Jason Beck, the co-founder of the Film Arcade, he walks us through why some movies may work well in the theatre but don't work well in digital release. He also explains that PVOD delivery platforms have limitations, making them simply unworkable when partnering with a specific art house movie theatre. This interview was recorded as part of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. The webcast was entitled "Will Skipped Theatricals Be the New Norm for Independent Movie Makers?" and it was broadcast live on August 19th, 2020 and was produced by Bitmax. And next, I would like to invite Jason Beck to join me. Beck, can you turn your video and your audio on?
Come on. Hey, Colin.
There you are. Very good. So, Beck, why don't you introduce us to the Film Arcade?
Yes. So the Film Arcade has been around 9 years. What started off as predominantly a theatrical distributor has turned into development, production, co-financing, mainly feature films. And then recently we got into financing independent television. So we kind of do a little bit of everything. We're a boutique company. There's about 8 of us.
Right.
But it's all independent production and distribution. So,
very good. So you were pretty much 100% focused on theatrical releases before mid-March, right?
Yeah. Last year we had a couple films. What we'd like to do is call it the art house platform release, sort of what Kristen was saying, open in a couple of theaters. Try to build awareness, whether it's, in-person Q&As with the talent, and then expanding from there. So that was our focus. Obviously, with what's happening now, we're kind of doing, kind of switching our plan. And what we're really trying to figure out is how long this will last, and try to predict what we should do moving forward. So.
Right. So let's think what happened, mid-March when those theaters closed. How did you begin to reorientate? Because, I don't know how long, well, first of all, how long do you think this is going to last realistically? The theater's going to be impacted, and then we can talk about what you're doing to retool.
It's a great question. And, the quick answer is I obviously don't know, but I do have an opinion. My opinion, excluding bigger releases, because I think that will come back quicker, because there's just a lot more money behind them. Independent theaters, and I hope I'm wrong, I think we're 1 to 2 years away from it really becoming a viable business again, where you can open a movie. If it does well, you could expand it. And again, I'm basing it on whether theaters are open or not. Obviously, it's great if they're open, but will people want to go out of their house and sit in an indoor environment for 2 hours.
So clearly you can't hold your breath for 2 years. So you have to do something. So tell us about how you're beginning to reorient the business to exist in this new world.
So what we started to do, because we do produce and finance movies, we've started reading a lot more and just trying to find projects that we could potentially shoot during this time, more kind of contained movies. A little bit on the smaller side, because you can't really rely. A lot of times what we do is we'll make a movie and hopefully get into a festival and launch it from there, but you can't even rely on that anymore. So we're trying to find contained features to make now and develop, and then obviously reading books and just trying to prepare for when this ends, as well as watching a lot of finished films, just to see what could be right for a virtual release. So we've been really trying to kind of build our slate. We're a little smaller than Goody. We do about 3 to 4 movies a year.
So do you actually have to, do you physically have to change the type of movies that you're focused on now? Because obviously promotion in a pre-COVID world with theater orientation is pretty different to promotion in a post-virtual digital world, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. So normally, a lot of times pre-COVID, we'll see a movie, and if we really respond to it and think it has something to say, whether it has cast or not, we can still buy it and release it. And I would have no problems doing that. Taking the risk, and you figure out how to do it, the right spend, the right release strategy. Now I'd be very nervous to do that. So I would really focus on movies that have cast. It doesn't need to be big cast, but it needs to be certain casts that have a following, whether they have a following on social media, Instagram or any of those places, because it's very hard to reach an audience pre-COVID, especially with independent film. I think it's even harder now if you don't have cast that has kind of a built-in following. And so that's really been our focus.
Yeah, that is one of the things that digital suddenly confronts us all with, right? Because suddenly you have to shout louder than folks like Netflix or Disney releasing a Mulan, or it becomes really difficult to grab attention, right?
Yeah, very difficult. Anything we're looking at, we know, normally we'll hire a PR company and bring them on 8 weeks earlier, but now I would even bring them on like 12 to 16 weeks earlier and really spend the money and do, as much work as early as possible to kind of build that kind of, core audience and try to build word of mouth before the film comes out.
Now, obviously, for you, and Kristen, and of course for Kurt, the local theaters are really critical. How are you thinking about working with local theaters through this trying time?
Yeah, it's again, like Kristen was saying, the virtual cinema and supporting the theaters. If I don't have any movies scheduled now, but if I did, maybe I would, work with the theaters and try to do something special for each and every virtual release. And yeah, just try to create awareness through that way. It's a scary time because I do know the business will come back, but it's going to come back for those who survive it. So the hope is it comes back sooner than later, and the theaters can kind of ride out the storm.
Right. So I've got one more question for you, and then I'm gonna I will ask an audience question. So if you have a question for Beck, please type it into the Q&A window right now. Could you explain to us how you think some of the things that you're learning now with PVOD might persist beyond the recovery when theaters are fully open?
Yeah, so I love virtual cinema. I know it's just kind of coming together now, and I've talked to a bunch of different distributors, and some of them are mixed on the kind of geo-filtering. So because I called a couple of people yesterday and I said, when you do virtual cinema, is it available for anyone? And a lot of them said it is, except certain theaters during some of their early releases asked for it to be kind of geo-filtered. So I have my own opinion. It would be great if it was only available to, the people within a certain mile radius. Obviously you want everyone to be able to see the movie, but it would be great if we started off for a week or two where it was just available to that independent theater circuit. And maybe that could potentially, it's not going to replace the theatrical, but at least it's something that not everyone has access to. And maybe you could kind of build a community that way. But a lot of people have a difference of opinion on that, but that's kind of where I see this going. If we knew today that this was going to last 2 years, I think that should be what movies should be doing. But unfortunately, I feel like we don't know, and there's going to be a lot of experimentation before we kind of settle on the right way to do things. One
thing I noticed in the chats and in the Q&A is people seem to be recognizing how important the film community itself is. Can you talk a little bit about how you're trying to nurture that community even as they're unable to go to the theaters?
Yeah, it's it is a challenge, and obviously it's more important now than it ever has been before. But again, just the easiest thing to do is obviously through social media and just to try to kind of build awareness that way. But it's, I don't think we'll lose, the independent film community, but we're going to have to find ways to keep them engaged. And I know a lot of people early on were doing watch parties, and, I saw someone had a question about, can it be done through Zoom? And the quick answer to all that is absolutely. But what will be the most effective? I don't know. I just think we have to try a lot of different things and then see what works best and then tailor it to kind of the specific movie.
Very, very good.
Lots of unknowns now, Colin.
Isn't it just? We're in the world of unknowns, indeed. Well, Beck, look, thank you so much. Please hang on and rejoin us again when we go to the open Q&A. Mr. Beck's experience illustrates the huge impact COVID-19 is having on the whole indie movie industry. It also looks like the road to recovery will be much longer than anyone would like. I hope you enjoyed this discussion with Jason Beck of the Film Arcade. You can see the entire session from which this interview was taken by going to the OTT.X channel on YouTube and looking for Will Skip Theatricals Be the New Norm for Independent Movie Makers. And my thanks to Bitmax for producing the webinar session.